There is a man sitting at a kitchen table right now, staring at a bank account he has spent the last 11 years carefully filling. He skipped vacations. He drove a car that barely started. He said no to dinners, no to opportunities, no to life. And yet, somehow, he is further from financial freedom today than he was when he first started. Not because he was lazy, not because he lacked discipline, but because no one ever told him the truth that the wealthiest people in the world figured out a long time ago. Saving money, the way most people do it, is one of the most quietly destructive financial habits you can build. Before you close this video, understand something. This is not a message against responsibility. This is not an invitation to go spend everything you have on things that do not matter. This is a deeper conversation about the invisible wall that separates people who work hard their entire lives and still end up with nothing from people who seem to build wealth almost effortlessly. That wall has a name, and most financial teachers never talk about it because it sounds uncomfortable. It sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like the opposite of everything your parents told you. But the data does not lie, and the stories of real people who figured this out will change the way you see money forever. Let us start with what saving money actually does to your psychology. When you commit to saving as your primary financial strategy, your brain begins to operate in what researchers call a scarcity mindset. You start seeing the world through the lens of what you cannot have, what you cannot do, and what you must give up. Studies in behavioral economics have consistently shown that people who operate primarily in scarcity mode make worse financial decisions over time. They become risk-averse in situations that actually require bold thinking. They hesitate at opportunities because opportunity always costs something up front. And the cruel irony is that the very discipline they are so proud of becomes the cage that keeps them from ever breaking free. Think about the person you know who clips coupons religiously, who tracks every dollar with obsessive detail, who never eats out and never splurges, and always seems to be doing the right thing. Now ask yourself an honest question. Are they wealthy, or are they simply comfortable in a very controlled kind of struggle? There is a difference between financial discipline and financial intelligence, and most people spend their entire lives mastering one while completely ignoring the other. Discipline without strategy is just suffering with good habits, and no amount of suffering in a savings account is going to produce the kind of life most people quietly dream about. Here is what the wealthiest people in the world understand that the average person does not. Money sitting still is money dying slowly. Inflation, which has averaged around 3% annually over long historical periods, quietly erodes the value of every dollar you park in a traditional savings account. Most standard savings accounts offer interest rates that do not come close to keeping up with inflation. That means the longer your money sits there, the less it can actually buy. You are not growing your wealth by saving. You are watching it shrink in slow motion while feeling the false comfort of a growing balance. The number goes up, the purchasing power goes down, and most people never even notice the difference. Now let us talk about the story of a woman named Patricia. She grew up in a working-class household where her mother repeated one phrase more than any other. "Save your money, Patricia. Save it for a rainy day." And Patricia did exactly that. For 23 years, she saved. She put away a portion of every paycheck with military precision. She never invested in the stock market because it felt too risky. She never started a business because she was afraid of losing what she had worked so hard to protect. By the time Patricia was in her late 40s, she had a savings account with what looked like a respectable amount of money. But when she sat down with a financial advisor for the first time in her life, she got news she was not prepared for. The advisor showed her a simple chart. On one side was the value of her savings, adjusted for inflation over those 23 years. On the other side was what that same amount of money would have grown to if she had invested even a modest portion of it into a diversified index fund during that same period. The difference was not a small gap. It was the financial equivalent of two different lives. Patricia had done everything she was told and still ended up in a position where retirement looked uncertain, where large opportunities remained out of reach, and where the discipline she had practiced for decades had not built the future she imagined. She had not failed because she was careless. She had failed because she had been given an incomplete map. Patricia's story is not unique. It is repeated in millions of households around the world every single day. The myth of saving as the path to wealth is one of the most widely accepted and least examined beliefs in modern financial culture. And it persists because it feels virtuous. There is something morally satisfying about the act of saving. It signals responsibility. It signals patience. It signals maturity. But financial markets do not reward virtue. They reward strategy. And a strategy built entirely around preservation rather than growth is a strategy designed to keep you exactly where you are, perhaps a little more cushioned, but fundamentally stuck in the same place. Let us bring in another real story. There is a man known in personal finance circles simply by his initials, RT, who grew up in genuine poverty. He did not just have a modest upbringing, he went to bed hungry on more than one occasion as a child. He had every reason to hoard every cent he ever earned. And in his 20s, he did exactly that. He saved with desperation and called it discipline. But one conversation with a mentor in his early 30s cracked something open in him. The mentor asked him a single question that he could never unhear. He asked, "Are you saving to survive, or are you building to thrive?" RT had never heard that distinction before. He had never thought of money as something you could direct, deploy, and multiply rather than simply stockpile and protect. Within 5 years of that conversation, RT had shifted his approach entirely. He did not abandon discipline, he redirected it. Instead of parking money in a savings account and feeling virtuous about it, he began directing that same disciplined energy toward acquiring assets. A modest property investment, a small index fund contribution he increased incrementally each year, a skill he developed and monetized on the side that eventually generated income independent of his primary job. None of these things were dramatic or glamorous. None of them required him to suddenly become a different person. They simply required him to apply the same patience and consistency he had always had toward a strategy that was actually designed to produce wealth rather than simply preserve it. This is the point that tends to make people uncomfortable. Wealth is not about earning more money. Wealthy people understand this completely. A person earning $200,000 a year can be financially struggling if their strategy is wrong. A person earning $40,000 a year can be on a path toward genuine financial independence if their strategy is aligned. The income is not the primary variable. The behavior is not even the primary variable. The strategy is. And a strategy that centers saving as the main event will almost always produce the same result. A person who lived carefully, sacrificed genuinely, and still ended up needing more than they have. So here is what all of this means for you, sitting wherever you are right now. The goal is not to stop being disciplined. The goal is to apply your discipline to a strategy that is actually built to win. Start with a real emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of living expenses, and once that foundation is secure, stop pouring more concrete. Begin to redirect that same disciplined energy toward assets that grow. It does not have to be dramatic. It does not have to be risky beyond your comfort level. It simply has to be intentional. The people who end up with choices, with freedom, with the ability to live on their own terms, are not the people who saved the hardest. They are the people who thought the clearest. And thinking clearly about money starts with one honest moment of asking yourself, am I building something, or am I just protecting nothing?